Hello, good evening. Just realized my mic is not plugged in, so give me a moment to sort that out. All right, there we go. You should be able to hear me. All right. Having a few technical difficulties. Hopefully, you can hear me just fine. Here we are live again on a Tuesday night. Um, you know, a lot of the times you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. And that can be very true when it comes to traveling. As many of you know, last week before, I was in Brazil. For part of that time, I was traveling with a group uh, and a lot of folks in that group were not the most experienced travelers. And that got me to thinking about like, what are some of the things that I know, like not to do, the mistakes I know not to make that maybe more inexperienced travelers don't know? And so that's what we're going to talk about. I have a list of about 12 travel mistakes that I see folks making that are either going to like impact the quality of their trip or possibly cost them a lot of money. So that is what we're going to talk about tonight. But before we do that, let me take a moment and introduce myself in case there are some new folks here. My name is Adelia Aborashade. I am a financial coach, a financial educator. Welcome to my channel where we talk about all of that money stuff you never learned when you were growing up, as well as how to travel the world solo, if you're into that, or even how to move to another country, which is what I did 9.5 years ago. Since then, I've lived in 4 different countries and traveled to 60 plus countries, who knows how many cities. So, welcome to the channel. If those sound like things that you want to hear more about, the best way to make sure that YouTube continues to bring my content to your feed is to go ahead and subscribe to the channel. You can also turn on notifications, and YouTube will let you know when I go live, like I'm doing tonight, or when I upload a pre recorded video. So, welcome. Glad you are here. Um, and this topic had been kind of in the back of my mind because I was traveling with other people. The vast majority of the travel that I typically do is solo, but there are times when I choose to do a group trip, particularly when I just want to show up and I don't want to be responsible for any of the planning. But in addition to that, I was on Facebook for a little bit today, and I'm in a variety of travel groups. And I saw somebody give some advice with, like, they said it with their whole chest, super confident in the advice they gave. And I was like, I don't know that that's what you should be telling somebody who's new to traveling. So we're going to go through my list of 12 things. Feel free to, if you think of some, drop those in the comments. Or if you happen to have some questions, drop those in the comments as well. Okay. Probably the number one, I think this is a mistake that I see new travelers making is bringing cash to exchange once they get to their destination. So if this person is from the US, they are bringing US dollars with them with the intention of exchanging them for local currency in their destination. And you might be thinking, well, what's wrong with that? Other countries have their own currency, they don't take US dollars. Well, here's the thing. When you bring your currency to another country, it's going to cost you money to convert it, and it's gonna cost you money in 2 ways. One of them is through fees. The vast majority of, like, those places you see in the airport that do currency exchange, they charge fees, but the other way that they get you is with, a crappy exchange rate. The only place I can think that I have ever gone where at the airport they did not charge me to exchange money and I got a decent rate from one of those kiosks was Thailand, because I think it's illegal in Thailand. Don't quote me on that because it's been a minute since I've been there, but I think so. So when you bring your US dollars with you to exchange, um, paying unnecessary fees. We're very much against that around here, but the exchange rate, you might not be thinking about it, but a lower exchange rate could cost you like $20, $30, $100, and that's money you're just giving away for no reason. So, what would be better, I think, than bringing your foreign currency to another country? I think the better move is to withdraw cash from the ATM in the destination country. It is, I'd say, 90%, maybe even as high as 95%, that you will get a better exchange rate from your bank at home, even though you're using somebody else's ATM machine. Your bank at home is probably going to give you a better exchange rate than any of those places at the airport. Now, depending on your banking situation, um, this could still cost you some money. So here's a tip to save you some additional money. Use the ATM card for an account that does not have foreign transaction fees. Um, if you do use an account that does have foreign transaction fees, those are typically 3 to 5% on every transaction. Why are we giving those people our money? So go to the ATM in the destination country. You will withdraw local currency from the ATM. Use a card for an account that does not charge a foreign transaction fee. And bonus, have it on an account that will rebate the ATM fee that you are charged at that ATM. I use my Fidelity Cash Management account card when I am traveling because they rebate all ATM fees. There is no cap on the amount, and they do not charge me a foreign transaction fee. Um, I believe Capital One has an account that does that, as well as USAA and, of course, Charles Schwab. So that's number one on my list of mistakes I want to see travelers stop making. Now, sticking with our theme of ATM machines, I was blown away when I recently saw somebody who travels, I think, as much as I do. I was standing behind them in a line at the ATM. They were withdrawing cash. Now, if you have never used an ATM in another country, typically what happens is when you put in your card, most machines will automatically switch the language to English. If it doesn't happen, you can choose to switch the language to English. Then it works pretty much the same. You put in your PIN, you tell them what kind of account you're using. Is it savings? Is it checking? Do you want to withdraw? You tell them how much you want to withdraw in the local currency. And then they notify you this ATM is going to charge you X amount. Do you accept that? You say yes. Then this is the important part. The ATM will offer to let you withdraw the money in your home currency. So it'll be like, oh, would you like to withdraw this in USD? It'll tell you the amount of USD, and you have to pay attention. It will also tell you the exchange rate it's giving you and what percentage of a markup that is on the exchange rate. um, Always decline that conversion. So they are offering out of the kindness of their heart, no, not really, because they're trying to make money off of you. They are offering to convert the transaction into your USD for you, but they're going to charge you. And remember what I said, either they're going to charge you a fee or they're going to give you a really shitty exchange rate. That's what they'll do. Decline the conversion. That should have no impact on the success of your overall transaction. I talked to a few people and they thought that they had to accept the conversion, that if they did not accept the conversion, it would kick them out of the withdrawal process. That is not the case. That should not happen that way. And often for the ATM, because I live here in Mexico City, the ATM across the street from me, generally when I like go to get my rent money, the difference between the amount that they say, hey, if you take our conversion, this is what we'll subtract from your bank account, and I decline that. I let my bank set the exchange rate. I always save on, let's say, about a $700 transaction. I always save somewhere between $20 to $40. Okay. So you want to get cash in your destination country, local currency out of the ATM. But when you are using the ATM, you want to decline the conversion because they are not going to give you the best rate. That would not help them. That would not serve them. That would not profit them. Okay. So that is number 2 on our list. Um, Number 3 is layovers. Um, Pre-2020, a lot of us would kind of include a longer layover in an effort to like get more bang for our buck when we travel, to be able to get 2 destinations during a single trip. And then the pandemic happened. And my personal policy since then has been to fly direct whenever I can. But that is a bit of a privilege. If you live someplace that has a very good international airport that's very well connected, you can probably get lots of direct flights. Also, direct flights often cost more. And sometimes it's like, hey, all I can afford is this flight with a layover. That's not a problem. The issue that I see, the 2 issues that I see with layovers is one, not considering how much time, just because, okay, this is how I'll put it. Just because when the airline offers the ticket, the route of the ticket to you, just because the airline gives you a 20-minute layover, a 1-hour layover, means nothing. You would think, no, they would not schedule me in such a way that I would miss my flight. Yes, they would. They do it all of the time. Okay. So when you are booking a flight with a layover, um, things that you need to consider is that airport's reputation. And if you are a fairly new traveler or you're new to international travel, you may not know that airport's reputation. And so this is where it comes to reaching out uh, in your communal spaces, the Facebook groups, the WhatsApp groups, wherever it is that you are in community with other travelers, and ask, in this airport, I would have this length of a layover. Is that doable? to connect my flight. As a general rule, I would not book a layover that was less than 2 hours simply because it's not just about it's the initial flight could be delayed. That eats into your layover as well as you land and you can't get a gate, like there are so many things that could go wrong there. The other issue I see with layovers is people who still want to do what we used to do before 2020 and like add another stop. Like, oh, I see this all the time with people coming here to Mexico City, where I have a layover in Mexico City because it is a hub, particularly if you are flying elsewhere in this country. A lot of flights will connect through here, and I want to go out and see the city. I have a 6-hour layover. Um, that's probably not enough time. And I know you're thinking, what? 6 hours? There's a couple of things to think about if you are booking a flight with a layover and you want to leave the airport. There are a couple of things. One, do you need um, a visa, a special permission? Like the EU has their, what is it? Is it a ESA, ETA, ESTA? I don't know. It's a special, it's not a visa per se, but I had to pay them, was it 11 pounds, 12 pounds to get permission to fly there because I was leaving the airport. But if I was just transiting, I wouldn't have needed that document. Okay. So if you are actually leaving the secure part of the airport, do you require some permission? Also, what time of day is that layover? Um, if you arrive at midnight and you have an 8-hour layover, um, what are you going to do overnight? Because the lounge will be closed. Are you down to sleep on a bench in the airport? Something to think about. But also, the thing that I see people not think about when coming to a place like Mexico City is what are the logistics? Because, like I said, many people would think a 6-hour layover would be plenty of time, but it isn't. Sometimes, I remember the first time I flew to Mexico City from Honduras when I was living there, we landed and we did not get off of the plane for an hour. And that is not all that uncommon. So getting off the plane could take you an hour. Getting through immigration, getting your bags, um, you know, and then traffic in Mexico City to get somewhere, and then you have to come back 5 or 6 hours. I would not chance it in Mexico City. I think you need at least 8 12-hour layover is much better. um This is a good point. You may also have to clear extra security when you move through an airport for transit. That can take time. And you just never know. The world that we're living in now, it seems like there's always some kind of huge travel kerfuffle happening. So, if you're going to book a flight with a layover, you need to if you need to, I think you need to give yourself at least 2 hours. um, and if you're wanting to leave the airport, I think you really need to ask some people and get an understanding of what would be the appropriate time for that particular airport. Okay. Um, assuming, or this is number 4, assuming that your phone will work abroad. Um, I think because we are in this point where like, you know, uh we no longer have to look at like coverage maps of does my phone work here? Does my service work there? We're not doing nights and weekends free anymore. It can be, it gets, you just don't even think about my cell phone and will it work? And so that is something to think about, not to assume that your cell phone will work somewhere else, because just because you have unlimited in the US does not necessarily mean you have that abroad. And kind of for for A here, if you are going to, I know a lot of y'all have phones that have eSIMs. I don't. I have a dual SIM Samsung phone that is like the bottom of the line. So I don't know anything about eSIMs, but if you need a physical SIM card, you need to make sure that your phone is unlocked before you take it with you abroad. Because if your phone is not unlocked and you get the local SIM card from your destination, it is not going to work. So that is something that you want to make sure that you have a good grasp on, because, most airports will have Wi-Fi when you land, but not all. Even today in 2025, I find that shocking, but it is true. Um, I'm trying to think. It was someplace I've gone in the last year that when I landed, there was no Wi-Fi, and I was appalled. I was absolutely appalled. Okay. Um, okay. So, the next one, I think this is number 5 on my list. This has to do with, comes back to money. A couple of mistakes, additional mistakes I see. Number 5, people paying with their debit card. People paying with their debit card. Y'all, this would be my worst nightmare, to be in a foreign country. I have paid for dinner with my debit card, and somebody skims my information and spends up the money in my bank account, and now I'm stuck in a foreign country with no money. Remember, debit cards, you have complete liability if someone steals your card somehow becomes compromised. With credit cards, your liability is generally limited to about $50. Okay. So I would absolutely never, ever use my debit card as a method of payment, because I'm basically opening the door to my checking account every time I do that. It would be much better either to pay for things with credit card, or if you're somebody who's like, no, I don't like credit cards, have cash. Have cash that you got at the ATM with your debit card. But paying for things with your debit card, don't do that, because they'll take all your money and you'll be super sad about it. All right, that was number 5. Number 6 is also money related, paying in USD when the local currency is not USD. Now, if you were to go to Ecuador, Panama, El Salvador, they have dollarized their economy. You don't need to exchange money. You can pay with the same USD that you brought with you from home. Um, and I see this a lot in Mexico, but I've seen it other places as well. I think once upon a time, it might have been the case that locals wanted USD. Okay. And so that idea continues to be floated around like, oh, they prefer to have our currency, the US dollar. Anyway, um, not really. I see a lot of the resorts. Sometimes you'll see this in airports where they will take USD, even though it is not a country that is on the dollar, but that's more out of, they are trying to provide you a convenience. Remember what I said before? They're not doing that out of the kindness of their heart. They're offering you that convenience at a cost. And it is giving you a really crappy um, exchange rate. Like right now, the median rate is 18.3 pesos to the dollar. In the airport, they give 16 pesos to the dollar if you pay in cash. Okay. So you don't want to do that. Also, uh, when you pay with a credit card, it might on the most countries outside the US, and I was gonna say I haven't been to the US in a while, uh, but in the US, when you paying with credit card, you put your card down, they take your card away, they go to the register and cash you out there. Most countries outside the US, they don't do that. They come with the terminal to your table, they punch in things, they let you see everything they're doing, and you see the whole transaction happen. And so as they're doing that, I've had from in my experience, it depends on the kind of establishment it is. And sometimes it depends on the like software they have on their terminals. But because it is a foreign credit card, often it will prompt, do you want to pay in the local currency, whatever that is, or do you want to pay in USD? A lot of US Americans would be like, oh, I'll pay in dollars. Remember what I said? They're giving you a crappy exchange rate. So whether you're paying with cash or you're paying with card, pay in the local currency. If you're paying with your card, your credit card, the bank that issued that credit card is going to give you a better exchange rate than that restaurant, than that bar. Um, oh, the other thing I was going to say about paying people in USD or tipping people in USD, be very careful with that. Don't make people's lives harder than they have to be, um, particularly if you are not in a heavily touristed area. Like giving people US change, what can they do with that? Most people, I'm not going to say most people. I can say that here in Mexico, but I can say most. But in a lot of countries, the people who you would be tipping are unbanked. So when you give them U.S. currency, they can't exchange it. No exchange kiosk is going to take change. Okay, that's number one. So don't don't tip people with change. And I heard this the other day from a creator on Instagram. She is in Puerto Vallarta and is engaged to a Mexican, and I think he works at a restaurant. And she was talking about um, Americans tipping in $2 bills. And she was talking about she'd seen more $2 bills in her time in Mexico than she'd ever seen in the US. And I thought that was odd that people would choose to tip in $2 bills. But here's the thing. Even if somebody has a bank account or they have the ability to exchange the US dollars for their local currency, a lot of places are not gonna take $1 bills. They're not gonna take, um, $2 bills. They're gonna want 20s. Some places only will take hundreds. And so you're giving people currency that they can't use. They cannot spend it, and they don't really have an easy way to exchange it. So that's another reason to, get local currency, get smaller bills so that you can do your tipping or whatever it is that you're choosing to do. Um, okay. Was that 6? Was that 6, y'all? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Um, number 7, not knowing your passport's validity. Um, when does your passport expire? The vast majority of countries around the world require you to have at least 6 months of validity left on your passport to enter their country. And so, if you are not keeping track with when your passport expires. Um, you can buy the ticket because you don't have to, even if it's an international ticket, you don't have to input your passport information when you buy the ticket. But if it turns out that your passport does not have enough validity left, they will not let you board the plane. And then you would have spent all that money for nothing. Okay. So, know how much validity you have on your passport is 7. 8 is also passport related. Um, this is something that comes with privilege. Those of us holding Canadian passports, US passports, probably a lot of European passports, we consider traveling to places, we book travel to places without really thinking about, do I need a visa? Is there any requirement? Can I just, I think a lot of us, because our passports are so strong and there are so many countries we can go to visa free, assume we can do that everywhere. And that is not the case. And so, just like not knowing how much validity you have on your passport, not considering whether or not you need a visa, um, can you can end up not being turned around from a country, not being allowed to enter, um, and then losing all of your money that you've spent on your trip. So that is something to be aware of. Um, and when this is one of those questions, I don't think you should pose to the people you are in community with. This is the only place I think you should go, two places you should go to determine whether or not you need a visa, either to the US State Department's website, to the section where they tell you these are the requirements for US citizens to enter this country, or to that country's immigration website. Do not post in a Facebook group, do I need a visa for this country? Because I have seen people say, oh no, you don't. And I know for a fact that you do. So with that, I would not try and crowdsource that information at all. All right, I think I said that was number 8. Um, Number 9, I would say that you should, how do I want to put this? I don't think you have to stick with US airlines when you are flying overseas. Like, I've seen primarily US Americans do this, where there's some concern, like it's an airline they've never heard of, and they're like, oh, never heard of it, so let me book with Delta or such and such. You can do that, but I say do an extra Google or two to find out about this airline, because what I have discovered is the non-US airlines generally have more generous baggage allotments. They don't penalize, like the seat will be included, you don't have to pay extra for that, those kinds of things. With some of the non-US airlines. Like, it, when you search on like Google Flights, they will list the different airlines and the different flights. And I would not limit myself to just the names I recognize. I would do a little extra research. I'm not saying book an airline you've never heard of and don't do any research on it. But I do a little research to see how do they compare, because their seats might be bigger. They might have less restrictions on a particular fare class or what have you, that sort of thing. Um, okay. What else is on my list? Oh, okay. I Maybe this is 10. I don't know, y'all. I lost count somewhere. I was doing really good for a while there. Okay, but the next one on my list, this is a mistake. I don't wanna see y'all make. Choosing accommodations in your destination and not considering traffic or your plans for while you are there. A lot of times we get caught up in wanting to stay in a place that, be it an Airbnb or a hotel that has a certain vibe, a certain aesthetic, and ignore the more practical issues of how long is it gonna take me to get from where I need to go to see the things I wanna see? Particularly if you are visiting a larger metropolitan area. Um, it's like getting if you're from Houston, you know how bad this is. It's like getting a hotel in Sugar Land to go to a concert in the Woodlands. That's what, an hour and a half drive each way if there's no traffic. Um, so that's I want you, before you book a place, I want you to think about, okay, what are some of the activities that I want to do in this location? Where are they located? I'm not saying that you need to stay in that area, but you do need to be strategic about locating yourself centrally, particularly if there's things you want to see that are going to be over here and things you want to see that are going to be over here. I think that also helps in planning out um, how you're going to get around. Um, you don't have to depend, just because they have Uber doesn't mean you have to take it. Um, because there are often times here in Mexico City where it is faster to walk than to take an Uber because the traffic is so bad. But think about, what parts of the city are you going to be in? Where are the attractions that you are going to visit? And then choose where you're going to stay with that in mind. Because otherwise, particularly if you don't have a lot of time in that destination, you're going to eat up so much of your time transiting back and forth between your accommodation and the various things that you are wanting to see or do in. Um, okay. And what else do I have on my list? Oh, probably the most important one, don't skip the travel insurance. Y'all, don't skip the travel insurance. Um, tr Travel insurance is something that's gonna cover, like, trip interruption, lost luggage, delays, things like that. Um, your travel insurance might also include travel medical insurance. If it doesn't, make sure you get a separate travel medical insurance policy, um, because if something happens, we had a situation in the foreigner community here where somebody ended up having it was life threatening. And the hospital where they were could not do the surgery that needed to happen, but the amount it was, they had insurance in the US. And for their particular policy, it they had to jump through some additional hoops to get, either to get transported back to the US. But that was taking time. And all of that time, they were running up a bill at the local hospital that said, hey, we can't do this surgery. Or they had to come up with something like 200 grand USD to be transported to a different hospital in a different part of the country that could do it. This is why you want travel medical insurance, because it would include emergency evacuation. It would include coverage to get you from the hospital that you're at that maybe can't treat you to one that does. As opposed to, if you have no insurance, Are you putting these tens of thousands of dollars, these hundreds of thousands of dollars on your credit card? Because unlike the US, um, most hospitals around the world, they expect payment before they do anything. They need to know that they are going to get paid. They're not just going to send you a bill. So don't skip the travel insurance. If by chance you're like, girl, I be wanting to get travel insurance, but I don't know where to look. I work with travelinsurance.com. There's a link in the description where what I like about them is you can kind of put in what it is you're looking for, and then they serve you up different policies and you can look at them and compare them. Here's the other thing I want y'all to think about when it comes to travel insurance. Read the policy. Don't assume the activity that you are participating in will be covered, or don't assume, like, know what it covers. Some policies will cover, there is an amount in there to get you a ticket in case the airline that you're on goes out of business while you're traveling. Um, Sometimes, a lot of times, they will not cover, like, oh, there was the government collapse in that country that you're in. They might not cover that. So not only is it important to get the insurance, but actually know what is in the policy, what is covered, what isn't covered, how much they cover. There are times when people go like, oh, I'm going to go four-wheeling on sand dunes. That might be considered an adventurous activity, and that may not be covered by your policy. So it's important to know that. And then there was one other thing I was going to remind y'all about when it came to travel insurance. What was it? What was it? What was it? Oh, make sure you have physical copies in case something happens to you. People know that you have insurance, they can contact them. The people that you leave at home, make sure they have your travel insurance information. It does you no good to buy travel insurance, but then nobody knows you have it and you are incapacitated and nobody can treat you. Okay. So I think that is all 12. All right. We had a question. What about if you use your debit card as a credit card? In the States, they ask if you want to use it as a debit or credit. Uh, does the same functionality exist abroad? Yes, it does. But here's the thing. My concern is the liability you have if something goes wrong, if there is a data breach, if somebody skims the information off your card, if your card is stolen. The kind of account is what matters in that situation. And whether you or the thief used it as a credit card does not matter if it is connected to your checking account. And so that is my concern, is using a card that is connected to an account with all of your money that the bank will let them take out and doesn't it's on you to prove that you weren't the one that did it. And as you can imagine, they're not really big on trying to believe people. Um, okay. Do we have any other questions, y'all? I think we answered that. All right. I don't think we have any more questions tonight. Are you all do you have any travel plans before the end of the year? I will be in Peru at the end of this month. That is my last trip for 2025. And believe it or not, I don't have any travel planned for 2026. This might be the year that I actually sit down somewhere We will see. But as of right now, I don't have any plans. All right, y'all. Thank you for joining me. Again, if you want more of this kind of content in your feed, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and I will talk to y'all later.